Good afternoon. As of 12 p.m. this afternoon, the City of Winston-Salem parked all of its non-emergency and non-sanitation vehicles in response to the current gas shortage situation. As of 1 p.m., we had roughly 9,100 gallons of gasoline left and 17,000 gallons of diesel fuel left. In a typical week, police and fire, as well as sanitation, use about 11,000 gallons of gasoline and have plenty of diesel on hand for a typical week of city services. But in response to the current shortage, we have suspended all what we described as non-essential services. So some of the things that currently would not be taking place would be inspections, recreation and parks, field maintenance, pothole repair, and minor building repairs are some of the things that currently would not be taking place in response to the current gas shortage. Typically, we get a fuel delivery about every week and a half. As of this morning, we were unable to get a fuel delivery. However, we do expect a delivery as early as Wednesday. So we think these measures with the current fuel that we have on hand will get us through the remainder of the next 3 days and be able to address and go forward with normal routine operations after the next shipment comes in, which we're expecting again as early as Wednesday of this week.
Obviously, you thought this was very serious to do this. Can you talk about that?
Yes, of course we've had experience like this before. You go back to Katrina. One of the things that the city looked at in Katrina was trying to address the fuel usage of vehicles. At that time, we're using considerably more fuel. We actually looked at some of the data back in 2005. Over a 10-month period, we're using about 510,000 gallons of fuel. Now we're about down to 209,000 gallons of fuel, which is about a 62% reduction. So with the measures that we've put in hand over the last 10 years, we've been able to address some of the ongoing need, but we still wanted to be prepared, not knowing, of course, we'll talk to our suppliers, and what we hear from our suppliers is that one of the two lines is down. The one line that is down does provide the gasoline that we need and that we're short on. So in response and hoping that our suppliers are going to be able to provide gas as early as Wednesday, we just felt it would be better to be safe than sorry later tomorrow or early Wednesday and not have sufficient fuel and have to take emergency measures then. So we just thought from a precautionary standpoint, it made more sense to try to do something now as opposed to waiting.
What happens if you don't get this shipment on Wednesday?
Right now we have enough fuel on hand, have 9,100 gallons. Police and fire alone, I keep saying police and fire, actually it's police and sanitation actually use about 11,000 gallons. So we have enough to get through the rest of this week. If we don't get a shipment in the next couple of days, we have other measures that we can actually implement. Right now we've implemented some measures. We have other measures such as eliminating all routine patrols of the police department and just responding to emergency calls. So right now we think we're fine with the fuel that we do have on hand, but we do have another contingency plan in place. If Wednesday or Thursday comes along, we've not received sufficient fuel by then.
Now, is fire included in this, what you're talking about, the fire trucks?
Fire actually is diesel. So we have plenty of diesel on hand. As of 1 o'clock, we actually have about 21,000 gallons of diesel.
So there are no restrictions in that area, or are there?
We've actually parked those vehicles as well that are not, so fire trucks have no restrictions, sanitation has no restrictions, both of them are diesel. There are other diesel vehicles that we have parked, but just as a precautionary measure. So right now, we have plenty of diesel on hand, are still getting diesel, actually got a diesel shipment this morning. So we still have capacity or the ability to get diesel fuel, so we're still comfortable with diesel, but we just want to be safe as opposed to waiting until the last minute and taking measures that we felt we should have been taking earlier.
What's the public going to notice most out of all this?
I think the public's going to notice Recreation, for example, if we have softball fields that are reserved for play, we might not be able to get out and actually grade the fields and have the fields ready for preparation. Inspections, so inspections both from a housing inspection case or from building inspections or from new construction inspection. Those type of inspections won't be able to be occurring over the next 2 days. Pothole repair. So it's going to be minor from a city perception of, or citizens' perception of, here's what I'm not able to see. We think it would be minimal for city impact, but we think also it's a measure that we had to take now as opposed to waiting a day or two.
And what about people who may have concerns that, you know, they call the police are not going to be there on time, or they call the fire department and they got a fire and the fire might not get put out? What about those concerns?
There's absolutely no impact at all at this point to police nor fire. So police are responding normally, fire's responding normally, sanitation services are normal. So there's absolutely no impact on services to any of the police, fire, or sanitation operations at this point.
How long is this going to last?
Hopefully, we'll get a fuel shipment in on Wednesday. Latest news I've heard is that also a temporary pipeline is hoped to be installed sometime between Wednesday and Friday. So hopefully this is a 3-day conservation measure that we take, that at the end of it we feel that we made the right decision and the austerity measures worked and there's no major impact on operations.
First of all, we have no local state of emergency at this point, but the governor declared a state of emergency, executive order rather, Thursday, and that order allowed vendors to transport gasoline and fuel other than the hours which there were restrictions. I don't have all the details as far as which hours there were, but they can operate right now 24 hours a day in respect to the transport of fuel.
So if we had a hurricane or something like that, or remnants from it to hit in this area, how would this impact, or would it?
There wouldn't really be a lot of difference at this point, because the pipeline is supposedly going to be repaired, well, a bypass will be installed by Friday, and we should be able to not be affected by any other natural occurrences, natural disasters that might occur between now and within the next week, 10 days.
We don't have a local emergency, like as you said, emergency here, but if we don't get that shipment Wednesday, will that push us to the emergency state?
What we could look at if we didn't get a shipment later this week. Again, right now we have sufficient fuel on hand through the end of the week and through the weekend. Assuming nothing happened, we may have to look at other measures 5, 6, 7 days out if we haven't received fuel by then.
You mentioned one of the other measures could be something like police cutting down on patrols. Are you talking about them going through maybe some potentially bad neighborhoods where they would go in and focus a lot of attention on not getting that same attention?
One of the things we did several years ago as part of Katrina is put a protocol in place, Plan A, Plan B, Plan C. Plan C we've been using ever since then, and that sort of addressed the whole issue of trying to conserve and cut down on our overall consumption. Plan A had, that's almost our local state of emergency. We still respond to calls for service when citizens would need us, but what it does is, for example, you might not see routine patrols. You might see police cars parked in those neighborhoods and officers out doing foot patrol as opposed to just riding through some of those neighborhoods, or some of the things we put in place probably 10 to 12 years ago as part of
Would any of that impact safety in any
what
way?
none of it impacted safety then, nor we expect it to impact safety now.
You said the vehicles that you're having to park now would be in the 1,000 range?
We have about 1,800 vehicles altogether, which are gasoline and diesel vehicles. The ones that we're parking are non-police, non-fire, non-sanitation. Police has about 600 vehicles. Fire has about 100, sanitation has about 100 vehicles, and fire has probably about 50 vehicles. So you take that, 750, probably have about 1,000 vehicles that are being impacted by this. There'll still be other operations. For example, one of the things that if there's a water main break, we would still respond to that as an emergency situation. So we're still responding to some services that are deemed to be emergency services outside of police, fire, sanitation on an as-needed basis.
So now these non-essential vehicles that you're parking, does that include, like, you know, a city worker who gets to take home a car as part of their job or whatever?
So those inspectors, for example, that have take-home vehicles are already required to either drive straight home or to park them at a fire station, for example. Because that may be their only means of work, they are still allowed to drive that vehicle back and forth, but to their assigned point of work, park the vehicle. And what they'll be doing is working in the office, doing things. For example, the maintenance crews will be working around their facilities, things that they might not normally get to do, working inside to repair equipment, make improvements in their facilities.
How confident are you it's going to be 3 days and done?
Well, of course, we're dependent upon our suppliers, and they're dependent upon the Colonial Pipeline being installed. None of us have control over that. Right now, what we're being told is that we will get fuel probably by Wednesday. So that's what we're going to continue to go on. If something happens different between now and Wednesday, or we're told something else differently between now and Wednesday, we'll look at other measures. But right now, based upon the information we're receiving, we still feel pretty confident that we will get fuel by the mid part of the week.
We want to ask everybody not to be overly apprehensive and to try to hoard gasoline. You know, hoard gasoline in your home or hoard gasoline in your automobile. That's going to be that could lead to a very dangerous situation. So we want to ask everybody to be careful. Let's not be too apprehensive, and let's not hoard gasoline in places that we shouldn't, because that is potential for disaster.
Is that a concern right now, Mel?
It will be. It has come up several times already, and we're.
What kinds of things are you talking about?
Well, just things. People who want to put a gasoline can in the trunk of their car. You have rear-end collision, you got a problem there, or those kinds of things, or storing gasoline in improper containers. Fire department can give you more details on that, but we just want to speak from a general standpoint and a public safety standpoint and ask folks not to try to hoard gasoline, but just follow the appropriate measures and do as you've done in the past and get their gasoline from the authorized dealers.